All right. This is an interview. Storm, what is your last? Peterson?
Cunningham.
Cunningham. Storm Cunningham. I'm sorry. I've said that 20 times. Okay, so this is related to your experience with fisheries, not management, you said, but more something that helped you get into this field. You had an experience that.
Yeah, water has always been a passion of mine. I've been a scuba diver ever since the military, and I guess the background of how I got into this is that 30 years of scuba diving was kind of a depressing experience. Because every time I went back to a favorite reef, it was in worse shape than before, and I'd often go back to a favorite place that absolutely, used to be full of life and color and fish, and it would just be a graveyard. So that kind of set the stage, and then I got involved. I did some volunteer work. There was a scientist, German scientist, living down in Jamaica, who was inventing a technology for coral reef restoration, and he needed a volunteer diver to help him set up the experiment. So I went down there for a week and actually saw his experiments in action, and the results of them. He had set up some previous ones a year earlier, and it was just amazing how they were bringing back a dead area to life. And that was kind of the first time this whole idea that we can restore the damage we've done to the world hit me. And then I eventually wrote my first book, The Restoration Economy, which covered, it was the first book to document all of the new industries and disciplines that were restoring different aspects of our natural and built environment. So fisheries restoration was one of those chapters.
Okay.
There's also brownfields remediation and redevelopment, infrastructure renewal, catastrophe recovery, agricultural restoration, which is these days being called regenerative agriculture, watershed restoration, ecosystem restoration, that sort of thing. And all of these are industries unto themselves, like you've got the multi-billion-dollar Everglades restoration project going on here in Florida.
What year was this in Jamaica you had this first experience? What year was that?
That would have been probably somewhere around 94, 95.
Okay.
And the first book came out in 2002, so I started writing it in 96.
Okay.
I'm a slow writer, so.
Doesn't sound slow to me. Okay.
And then, so that was kind of the historical relationship to restoring fisheries, because as you know, coral reefs are the primary source of fish in the oceans, those in the mangroves. In fact, the mangroves and the corals work together as one system. If you don't have the mangroves, the corals will die, because the mangroves are what filter the sediment that's washing off the mainland. The sediment will kill the corals, so the mangrove reefs filter that out before they get out to the coral reefs.
Okay.
And they also act as an incubator for baby species that would be too exposed out on the coral reef to predators. They hide in the mangrove roots until they're large enough to survive.
Okay.
So the more recent, extremely recent experiences that I've just gotten involved with the Passamaquoddy Indian tribe up in Maine. They're right on the border of Maine and Canada.
Okay.
And they're it's a small tribe, the Pleasant Point Band, and they are very interested in restoring some of the native species there, including some that are quite important traditionally to their culture, like the American eel. And they're also interested in helping to restore in a way that they can harvest, so it would be an economic activity too. But some of the native shellfish around there, the clams, the mussels, and all that sort of thing. So the nice thing about aquaculture and mariculture, which is saltwater aquaculture. The nice thing about doing that with shellfish is that unlike some forms of aquaculture, like the salmon farming that you hear about, it doesn't pollute. You know, the salmon farms are environmental disasters.
Yes, yeah.
Whereas with shellfish, you don't have to feed them. They're filter feeders. So the very process of feeding them cleans the water. So every time you harvest your shellfish, you're leaving the water cleaner than it was before. So it's a wonderfully restorative way to make a living.
And these salmon are carnivores. They eat.
Yeah, I mean they go out and
you have to feed them
they
other fish.
scoop up huge amounts of fish from the ocean to feed these salmon, and they pollute the rivers that the salmon are in.
Okay.
And then they use genetically modified salmon that escape and pollute the native species with their genes. And because they're all crowded into these nets, the salmon get diseases that they wouldn't get in normal circumstances, and those diseases spread to the wild population. So salmon farming overall is just a complete disaster.
Okay. So you're helping the this Indian tribe with shellfish farming?
Just getting started
getting
with
started.
it. I mean,
Okay.
my role, I'm not a technician in any way. You know, they need to bring in somebody who actually understands the biology and ecology of shellfish
But
and
you're
American
managing
eels
the
and
pro-
all
helping to
that.
manage the
I'm more of the
project.
strategy guy. I'm the one who comes in to help communities and regions figure out how do we grow our economy and increase our quality of life and do all these other things that we generally categorize as revitalization in such a way that we actually leave our environment in better condition than it was before, which is why my first book was called The Restoration Economy. Is that
Right. Okay.
it's what I call restorative development. It's a way of growing economically that is based on restoring natural resources, revitalizing existing cities, you know, renewing existing assets, rather than the usual sprawl and extraction of virgin resources model.
Okay. Okay. This is great. I can't think of anything at the moment. Is there anything else?
You'll probably pick up more stuff in my talk. Yeah,
Great.
so
Perfect.
that'll
Okay.
fill in any gaps.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure, Rebecca.
Storm Cunningham.
And
Like
if you
we're
have
on
any
video.
follow-up questions, the
Okay.
email is storm@revitalize.com. Oh, you already know that. We've communicated.